Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Today we're making sauerkraut and weenies. Now this is one of those meals that has been around all my life and a whole lot longer than my life. It was probably born in the Depression era, but sauerkraut has been around for centuries. And it is an extremely healthy food that we used to include in our diets on a regular basis, but we do not anymore, and that's why we're all eating probiotics that come in a jar. If we put fermented foods back in our diet, we won't need to buy those things because fermented foods contain probiotics. And we used to have a lot of those in our diet because fermentation was a way of preserving food, and everybody used to pickle everything because it kept it edible for years. Anyway, what you need for sauerkraut and weenies is you need weenies, sauerkraut, and a little bit of butter to fry it in. I'm going to add a little bit of onion to mine just because I like the flavor it adds. And this is like half of a medium-sized onion. You don't need quite that much, but I didn't see no reason to waste it. And what my mama always did when she could afford it is she used a regular 1-pound package of hot dogs per 2 cans of sauerkraut or per quart of sauerkraut. Now her and my Aunt Dot and my granny and my Aunt Pork would come over, and sometimes my Aunt Carolyn would come down, and sometimes Effie and Louise would be there, and they would grate cabbage for days, put it in tubs with the salt and turn it and ferment and can it. So growing up, we usually had homemade sauerkraut. But anyway, I'm going to start here by putting a little butter in my skillet, and we'll talk more about Granny and Mom and Dot and all of them here in a minute. One of those cook tricks that you might not know is if you wait until your pan is hot to add whatever fat you're cooking into it, it will keep your food from sticking better than if you put your fat in a cold pan. All right, now you want to cut your hot dogs up. I'm just using half a pound, which is half one of these packs, and I'm just using 1 can of kraut, which I have draining here. Mama always drained hers, and she always drank the kraut juice because, like I said, it is very, very good for you, and you can drink it. But she liked hers chilled, and this was a big summertime meal. I don't know why so much we had it in the summertime, but we had this a lot in the summertime. And she would drain her kraut and chill her juice, and that would be like her afternoon treat. Throw your weenies in there, and we're going to kind of cook them till they're brown. Now, if you're on a really tight budget, you can use 2 cans of kraut with this many weenies. We've talked about this before. You just cut them up smaller. Grocery store sales are going to save you a fortune right now, and I don't know how anybody's making it without grocery store sales. But watch your local grocery stores. They cycle their sales every 4 to 6 weeks. And one of the stores here in town, they have 2-pound packages of name brand hot dogs for $3 about every 6 weeks. And that's $1.50 a pound. You can't get nothing for that right now. I'm going to go ahead and throw my onions in there. Now the onions are optional. Mama also always ate her onions raw and on the side. She didn't fry them in with her kraut. But I love the flavor that the onions have when you mix it with this. And onions are another extremely healthy food. And if we're living off hot dogs, we need to put them with something healthy. We're going to put a little bit of pepper in here. You do not want to add any salt to anything that you're putting sauerkraut in because, like I was talking about, Mama and Dot, Aunt Pork and Granny and all of them getting together, my Aunt Louise, making sauerkraut, grating that cabbage for days. You salt it and let it ferment, and you have to rotate it. They would have wash tubs sitting out, several of them. And a few times a day, they would rotate that until it was fermented, and then they would can it. So it's actually preserved with salt and fermentation. So don't add any salt to it. That's another reason to drain it. That juice is extremely salty. When I was growing up, we had 3 family gardens, and everybody also had their own garden. And my mama's family all lived around in one holler, just about. Now my Aunt Louise, she moved off, and Aunt Effie, she like halfway moved off. She moved off, and then she'd come back and kind of back and forth. I had one uncle that did not live there, but he was pretty close. And all the rest of her family, they lived around there. So there was a lot of people to work in the garden. And everybody also had their own garden. There were like 3 1-acre gardens, one in front of my granny's house, one over up behind it kind of, and then one way over to the side. And then my Uncle Luther and Aunt Carolyn had a garden. My Aunt Pork, she had a little garden spot, but not too much because she was right in front of one of the big gardens. We had a little garden spot because we were kind of over the hill, but we worked in the garden every day from spring till late fall. And my Aunt Dot, she took care of my granny and pa, and she stayed with them, and she pretty much didn't have her own separate spot, but every once in a while her and Effie'd put out another little garden together, the two of them. So anyway, my point to all of this is that because we had that extended family, we were able to work all of those big gardens. They were able to make gallons and gallons and gallons of sauerkraut. They were able to can gallons and gallons and gallons of green beans and other stuff. They slaughtered a hog every year, and they froze and canned all the meat from that. And it was a family project. They worked it together. They used to call it sustenance farming. We just called it dirt poor. But having that family support system made it possible to get through those tough times without having a lot of money, because you combine that labor. And I had a friend the other day, she posted on Facebook, and she said that she wanted to start a commune community, which we used to call an extended family, but she couldn't decide who to invite. My entire life, there has been, it seems like, it don't seem like, it's true, policies by our government to weaken and destroy families. And our families are so asunder now that we do not have that family support anymore. I hear Christians all the time that say, I couldn't have gotten through it without the Lord. The Lord got me through it. Well, I'm certainly in that boat. I'm right there with you, and I understand what you're saying when you say the Lord got you through it, because God has walked with me and delivered me from so much. But God did not create us to be alone. And in the Bible, it talks about the importance of family and the role of family, and that's a very long speech, but the purpose for the law was to reconcile us with God. The purpose for Jesus in grace, what we have now, Jesus reconciles us with God. John 3:16 says, For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him should not perish but have everlasting life. Be reconciled with God. And 1 John 4:15 says, Whosoever shall confess Jesus is the Son of God, God dwelleth in him, and he in God. If God dwells in us, if we are reconciled with God, God is with us. And it is far easier for most of us to reconcile with God than it is for us to reconcile with our families. But if we have God in us and we are living in God, living Christian lives, living our life for Christ, we have him as our Lord, we should be able to reconcile and come together, because what we have in us is greater than the differences between us. And until we reconcile as families and we have strong families again in this country, we're never going to have strong communities again. And we're certainly never going to have a strong nation again. And most Christians understand that we have to have strong families in order to have strong communities, in order to have a strong nation. We need to start reconciling with our family members. And I know we all have those estranged family members. And there are so many of us who are so very, very alone. And we just find it impossible to say I'm sorry, or to ask for forgiveness, or to forgive one another for things that truly, in the grand scheme of things, are petty. What we have in common, if we are Christians, God in us, should be greater than those things that separate us. And we need to reconcile with our families. We need to reconcile with our families. We need to reconcile with our churches. We need to reconcile with our neighbors so that we can build communities of faith and neighborhoods of faith where children can play safely again in order to have a strong country again. I have a feeling that there are storms coming that we are not going to be able to survive alone. And we need to have reconciliation in this country. There's a big push for unity in the country again. That is never going to happen unless we are reconciled with God first and reconciled with our families second. God gives us the hierarchy. It's God, our family, our community, our country. Well, I forgot our church. It's God, our family, our church, our community, our country. And we need to start that reconciliation in our homes with the people that we love. Because I got to tell y'all, life was way, way easier when I had aunts and uncles all around, when I had cousins all around, and when we were all working together. We have so separated that we don't even have brothers and sisters anymore. Anyways, once your onion and your hot dogs are as brown as you want them, and you can brown them as much as you want to, go ahead and add your sauerkraut. And you can chill that juice and drink it if you want to. You can even drink it warm. I guarantee you it'll give you a pick-me-up. And all we're really doing with our sauerkraut now is we're heating it. That's it. You can add a little more butter to it. You don't have to. And you can cook it in any fat. Lots of times, this grabbing the bacon grease jar when you cook this and cooking it in a little bacon grease, which will also add a lot more flavor to it. And the bacon grease is something that you just save. It's part of the bacon and you don't have to pay extra for it. And we're getting to times where we are going to have to reuse everything. We need to reuse everything, and we need our families back in our lives. We need those extended families like we grew up with. I see those posts on Facebook all the time, and they make me so sad. It's all the kids in the neighborhood playing together, our big family gatherings, because we just don't have those anymore in this country. We have been so separated and so divided by the way things are. And the way things are need change. You can make this meal for your family on a weeknight in less than 30 minutes. I've got some cornbread over here. I've fried up some potatoes. We would either have it with fried potatoes or mashed potatoes. Cornbread most of the time. After I got older, Mama didn't make cornbread all the time. She'd just throw a couple pieces of sandwich bread on the plate and just have a couple pieces of bread with it. You can do that too, especially if you're in a hurry or if it's in the summertime and you don't want to heat the oven up. And that might be why she didn't make cornbread all the time, because like I said, we had this a lot in the summertime. And maybe she just didn't want to heat the house up with the oven. But this was like a weekly rotation meal when I was growing up. And you can still make it for far less than $10. I would say you could probably make this meal for a family of 4 for about $6 with the potatoes, with the cornbread, and with the sauerkraut and weenies if you shop it on sale. And you can have it ready in 30 minutes. So, you know, you might want to put this one back on your rotation. It is super cheap and it is fairly healthy. And I know the hot dogs are not. I keep saying it's healthy. The hot dogs are not super healthy, but the sauerkraut is, the onions are. And that's literally all there is to it. Once you get your hot dogs and your onions brown as you want them, then you just heat up the sauerkraut. And yell for them to come eat dinner. And you can, like I prepped everything while I was mixing the cornbread and waiting for the oven to preheat. So you can have it ready, the whole thing, in 30 minutes time. I want to thank you so much for joining us in the Hillbilly Kitchen. And if you have not already, I want to ask you to please subscribe, share our videos with your friends, and until next time, remember to put God first.